When I was a little boy, I always dreamed that I would meet a girl with whom I could work. No one knew what Majorie Rieu's name was. But everyone knew Andre's funny smile, his shows, and his €50 million business empire. They didn't know who was behind it all: a woman. She slept in the halls. In a single problem, she lost 12 kilograms. She knew things about him that could have ended his career right away. This was the news that doctors tried to keep from the press. The one that made Andre say in the wings that he never wanted another day like that one again. Right now Marjorie is leaving. Why did she wait so long? That's the real question. This is the story of how one illness hurt them both. In the early 1950s, Marjorie Kochman's story starts in Maastricht, where the walls of her house still held the weight of a world that had just been through a war. Growing up in a strict German-Dutch home, where her father was very strict, everything moved to the beat of his rules. He had been through the Holocaust and made it back to life. He thought words could protect his family. For that reason, when Marjorie turned 5, her nights were full of German drills and songs by Goethe. She would stand in the living room and say the same lines over and over until her voice got tired. She could switch between German and Dutch like they were her first language by the time she was 10. She later said that these drills didn't feel like lessons and instead were more like her dad was trying to fix something inside himself. This helped her understand him better, even when it was tight and heavy outside. As she got older, she started to feel a little more rebellious. At age 8, when everyone thought she should play the piano like a girl, she grabbed the violin instead. She took it up to the attic, which quickly became her secret place. To soften the sound, she practiced for hours with the bow tucked under old blankets. Every time her dad heard the fiddle, he got more and more angry. But she kept going back to that dirty room. By the time she was 10, she could play hard pieces just by listening to them. That secret skill helped her get ahead, even when it meant she didn't eat or sleep. It was those times that set the stage for her future in the music business. At age 14, she was brave enough to leave her family home and play at folk shows in her area. She picked Beatles songs because they made her feel wild and free in her strict community. After each job, she got 10 guilders, which she put in a sock so her mother wouldn't find them. Played at least 20 shows between 1966 and 1968, making about 200 guilders. She saved this money to buy her first real violin. Around her at these shows were other teens who felt the same pull toward something new. She would always remember that moment as the time she learned how music could bring people together and loosen the rules that were trying to stop her. When she turned 16, that drive grew stronger. A lot of students crowded into the dark basement of her school for bohemian music nights to listen to jazz, rock, and folk. The school was very strict about following classical rules, so her nights in the basement felt like small uprisings. The gatherings kept getting bigger until one night when someone called the cops to report dancing that was not appropriate. She was kicked out of school for 3 months, but that didn't stop her. The local media wrote about the scandal after she moved the concerts to the homes of friends. She said that those nights taught her that music could bring people together, even when they were being told what to do. Then, when she was 17, she found the book her dad had hidden. It was put away and never opened, but everything changed after she read it. The pages talked about how he got out of Auschwitz and the many years he spent hiding after most of his family died. The raw pain in those pages made her see the dark things he carried. His strictness made sense all of a sudden. She knew he was trying to make her strong because fear had made him that way. She promised herself that day that she would live louder than quiet. The opposite of what her father had been through was what she wanted her music to do: bring hope and light. After that, she made all of her decisions based on that vow. By 19, after starting to work as a teacher at Jeanne d'Arc College, Marjorie went to the University of Nijmegen to study German. She taught for 7 years, but she never thought she was cut out to be in charge of a classroom. She taught during the week, but on the weekends she sneaked off to write jingles for radio stations in the area. She made 200 guilders a month, but she didn't tell her school director about her extra work because it was against the rules. She said that she was scared and excited at the same time. But having 2 jobs helped her pay for her growing love of music. She soon felt ready to jump. When she was 21, she quit teaching to play violin and arrange music for Gemma Menon's salon orchestra. For money, she would sometimes just get sandwiches when she rewrote waltzes for retirement homes. Even back then, she made the most of every moment, and in just a few months, she had a list of over 50 marketers. This list became the most important thing in her life. It was risky for her to quit a steady job and go into the uncertain world of freelance music, but she went with her gut. She worked hard and became well known in the Dutch music scene. Then 1973 came along and changed everything. That she wrote with her boyfriend, Majorie Rieu, is on a test tape. Once the tape was ready, Majorie took over the business side. It took weeks to get ready. She called 47 Dutch record companies from a payphone. 46 turned her down, saying that the sound of the classical blend was too niche. Finally, one record company agreed to give them a try. That one yes changed everything in their lives. She always thought about how each turn down made her stronger and the last yes even more sweet. When she was 22, she needed 500 guilders to pay for the first practice of the Maastricht Salon Orchestra, so she had to sell her violin. The practice took place in the cold basement of a church with 9 musicians who played for free because they believed in her mission. She was in danger of losing her most valuable tool. She knew that practice had to happen, though. It was an important step in their dream, and it taught her that making sacrifices can lead to opportunities they hadn't seen before. When she was 24, she took the group outside of the Netherlands. She set up their first gig in the US at a fair in Chicago for Dutch expats. She took care of every visa and detail by herself. While she was 7 months along with their boy Mark. Back in the early 1980s, traveling was already hard, and being pregnant made it even harder. Still, she made it work. That show was the start of their trip around the world, and it showed how strong she was under high pressure. She had married Majorie Rieu in secret 2 years before that trip to Chicago. Because Andre's parents didn't like Majorie, their civil wedding on October 18, 1975, was kept secret. They called her a hippie and made him go to therapy for 4 years. She was by his side through everything, and they were married for more than 48 years. She later became his manager, wrote for him, and was the quiet force behind his worldwide success. They became friends because they were both going through hard times and liked the same music. They also promised each other that they would always support each other. By 1978, Andre had put together the Maastricht Salon Orchestra, which had 12 players. For practices, they used their kitchen and living room, and Majorie worked late into the night writing by hand 200 sets of sheet music for shows. She said no to Andre's half-joking offer to open a pizza shop if the orchestra failed. Soon after those early practices, the band played small shows all over the Netherlands and Germany. After 10 years, the group changed into the famous Johann Strauss Orchestra known all over the world. At every step, the group moved forward thanks to her work that no one saw. But as things grew, hard times came too. In 1982, they played at a nearby home for the elderly, but only 8 people showed up. All 8 of them left before the end of the dance. That hurt Majorie, but she didn't let it last long. She went after people in the crowd, talked to them one-on-one, and offered them free tea at future shows. Because she didn't give up, they did 15 more shows, which helped build their image over time. She thought that if you were careful, one small chance could turn into many. Not only did she have to be artistic, she also had to be protective. She found out that their accountant had stolen 10,000 guilders from the orchestra when she was 28 years old. She looked through the books all night, found the money that was missing, fired the accountant, and went to court. She got back 70% of the money that was stolen and kept them from going bankrupt. That kind of thing showed how strongly she could protect their dream, just like she did when she built it. She used a kitchen printer to make the orchestra's first promotional brochure when she was 30 years old. She made 500 copies and sent them to fairs and producers in Belgium. They got 22 paid gigs, with an average pay of 300 guilders each. That's a total of 6,600 guilders. That effort was the first step in their business growth. It proved that she could turn a homemade project into a real business if she worked hard, thought outside the box, and wasn't afraid to be different. Before anyone knew their names, Majorie Rieu began to shape Andre's future. She drove nearly 200 kilometers across the Netherlands in 1985, stopping at 5 retirement homes with a stack of sheet music and a strong conviction that these small shows were important. At every stop, she got a tip of 50 Dutch guilders, which she put away in jars so André could keep following his dream. She whispered bits of English to him at every show, which helped him talk to older people who didn't always get his jokes. But they loved the way he made those quiet rooms feel. It stayed the same for months, and the nights were long. Still, each show moved them forward. André felt more sure of himself after that slow climb, which helped him move on from the small rooms to theaters and concert stages. After that, something happened that made everything even harder. Marjorie got pneumonia while on a 40-concert tour of Belgium in the 1980s. She was only 32 years old at the time. During sound checks, she felt dizzy, but she kept playing until she passed out after the last show. The doctors told her she had done a lot more than was safe. Still, as soon as she got better, she used her fall to get the organizer to pay her twice as much. People around her were shocked, but this story was told over and over because it showed how tough she was. People were talking about how tough she was, and that showed how much the dream they were building cost. She had found another mountain to climb by 1987. She talked to 12 Dutch radio stations about bringing back the waltz because she thought that traditional waltzes could still feel fresh. All 12 turned her down. They said that old waltzes were no longer popular. She didn't give up. Instead, she walked into one of the stations without being invited and played live in their hallway while executives looked shocked. It worked. The station was the first to play her music. Majorie Rieu got a lot of new fans, bookings, and a new road because of that one spark. Every step she took showed that she would not accept no. Her life never stopped. In 1981, she went back to gigs just 3 days after giving birth to their second son, Pierre. Her baby was on her back while she played the violin and went into places. Juggling being a mom and being on stage without missing any shows. Some artists said it was too much, but she kept going because she thought both worlds needed her full attention. Over time, people started to respect how well she balanced her life, and many young mothers in the music scene seemed to get ideas from her. Her thoughts got bigger as the years went by. She made something in 1989 that became known as the Gig Bible. She wrote down 1,200 contacts by hand from years of notes and sold copies to other artists for 100 guilders each. The cash helped the family get their first tour bus. The Bible wasn't just a list. It had tips on how to get booked, locations, and promoters. The musicians gave it to each other like it was gold. Everyone knew Marjorie thought of it. At about the same time, something else very important happened. To start the Johann Strauss Orchestra, André brought together 12 players in 1987. Behind the scenes, Marjorie took care of the money, the arrangements, and everything else. On January 1, 1988, in Maastricht, they played their first show. With her focus and discipline, she shaped the early years and helped André get through the hard times. It had grown by 1994, and her steady hand kept the group together as they got ready for bigger stages. However, she also made important choices. The orchestra went from 35 players to 20 in 1987, when she fired 15 of them in one angry meeting. She thought some players weren't giving it their all. People were moved to tears by her choice, but the performances got better after that. People saw the change, and critics gave the new discipline high marks. Dutch media wrote about how tough she was, and this was the first step in the orchestra's change. In 1989, to pay for their first CD, she took out a loan for 50,000 Dutch guilders on the family home. This was her biggest risk. She carried boxes of the CD from store to store across the Netherlands without any help from the record makers. People in the store agreed to let her try them after she put them on the shelves herself. People liked the CD, and it was the first real big hit. People still talk about how she put everything at risk for the music she loved. She pushed again the next year. In 1990, she locked herself up with Polydor Records execs at a party in Amsterdam and made them listen to the demo tape. She talked for 3 hours about why the musicians should get a deal. When they finally agreed, the orchestra went in a whole new way. The signing led to more records, bigger venues, and more popularity around the world. Because she didn't give up, another door had opened. In 1991, she got the Maastricht City Council to let music happen in the Vrijthof, a square with 5,000 seats. When the officials were not sure what to do, she suggested that they might move the base to Liège, Belgium. The city council broke up, and the Vrijthof became the summer home of the orchestra. Fans from all over the world came to love those shows as a tradition. When she was 38, she had another great idea. VIP waltz lessons let concertgoers dance with orchestra members before the shows for an extra fee. This made more money. By 20% at 50 shows in Europe, and made the events unforgettable for fans. Almost right away, other bands copied the idea. The dream soon reached other continents. She went to a big promoter meeting in New York in 1994 dressed as a waitress and gave André's tape to a key agent. Because she was brave, André was booked at Carnegie Hall. The show was sold out in days. And the start of their rise in America. They couldn't be stopped, not even by crimes. It was said in a tabloid in 1996 that the orchestra was coming apart because of fights within it. In response, Majorie leaked a different story about a diva musician who had been fired for bad behavior. Fans backed André, and sales of his albums went up by 30%. She quickly thought of a way to make problems into strength. She helped put out Majorie Rieu, My Music, My Life that same year. She wrote most of it herself after talking to 500 people for hours to get information. It made it to number 3 on the Dutch charts and stayed in print for years because people thought the story was so real. There were many hard times, but she turned each one into something good. In 1998, 45 people were stuck when the orchestra's tour bus broke down in the Alps. A hairpin was used by Majorie to hotwire the generator, which kept it going long enough for André to play a concert by candlelight for 2,000 people. Quickly, the story spread, and many people loved remembering it from their live shows. Then, in 1999, she worked out a clause in the contract for stadium tours. That banned all competing goods. When up to 10,000 people came to see them, the group kept all of the money they made from ticket sales. The idea changed how classical shows handled merchandise and helped them make sure they could keep making money. From the beginning of André's career, she worked behind the scenes to create the world that people would later think was created by magic. She was in charge of every little thing about his shows. Every story he turned in and interview he did. She built up the picture of the King of Waltz little by little until it looked and felt like it had always been there. During the 2000s, she wrote more than 200 performance introductions in 5 languages and had André practice for each one up to 50 times. She did this because she knew that preparation builds confidence. The 2008 book that told the world how their trip began was one of his biographies that she translated and edited. André himself has said more than once that he would not be Majorie Rieu without Majorie. It wasn't a nice praise when he said that. It was real. She helped them make long-term plans for the future, managed the artists, created the brand, and made strategic decisions. She shaped something that felt bigger than both of them. She was strong when it came to money too. Everyone in the Ruse group knew that she was keeping an eye on all the numbers. She checked the books herself every 3 months. She once found out that 3 managers were taking 5% of the orchestra's income without anyone knowing. If she hadn't caught it early, that small number would have grown to millions. They were fired, and she took over and reorganized the money herself. In just a few years, the orchestra's income went from €1 million in the early 2000s to €50 million in 2005. It wasn't a mistake. It came from making quick choices, going global, and negotiating contracts carefully. She turned a well-liked orchestra into a stable source of income that could withstand storms that would have killed other organizations. Then she did something that showed how far she would go for André. Sony gave her a solo job offer in 2007. It was tricky and rare. She could have taken the stage for herself, but she didn't because she knew it would take attention away from André's dream. Instead, she decided to write his next biography without him knowing. When it came out in 2008, that book sold a lot of copies. It made him look better around the world more than any press tour could have. That's right, she gave up her own road to help build his. There are some loud choices. It was quiet, but it changed everything. Being quiet did not make her kind. She moved quickly in 2008, when the movie business was hit hard by the recession. Contracts had to be written over quickly. The venues had to be renegotiated. She sat down with a fax machine one night and reset 150 deals, which saved the orchestra from going out of business and cut costs by 20%. She changed how things were run, kept jobs safe, and led the brand through a storm that shut down businesses much bigger than theirs. During a year full of fear, she became the voice of reason and led everyone through it with the clarity she always had. By 2010, she knew that building a kingdom is one thing, but keeping it going is a whole other story. She set up a family trust and put Pierre and Mark in a situation where they could learn by doing. From the time she was 18, they followed her to shadow gigs, watched practices, looked at her finances, and learned how to make decisions that would protect the orchestra's future. The trust turned into a plan for the long run. A quiet wall around everything the family had made. Other families looked at her plans very closely because they showed them how to protect a legacy without freezing it. Then the shock of 2010 came along and changed their lives. At 3 a.m. in Belgium, André passed out. It wasn't from being tired or from traveling. He had a virus that was attacking his auditory nerve. The part inside the ear that keeps you balanced. The world started spinning all of a sudden, and he couldn't stand up without falling. His job required him to be able to move and stay stable, but for 3 months he could barely walk. Tours ended. There were no concerts. 40,000 people who had tickets were affected. The musicians stopped moving because they didn't know what to do next. A lot of news stories were written about altitude sickness, but the truth was much worse. His whole ability to perform was on the line, and Marjorie was the only one who could make choices. It was like that night in Belgium never left him. In the backroom area, he told her in a whisper that he never wanted another day like that. From that point on, she worked hard for his healing, which saved his future. That he had to go to balance therapy every day. She wouldn't let him go back to the stage early, even if it meant missing a dream show at Friedhof, where they both loved going. When he fought, she felt the weight of his anger. She was scared, but she knew what was at risk. He might lose everything if he came back too soon. In the end, he said that her tough love was what made him feel like he could go back on stage. So she could be close enough to catch him if he fell. She slept in the hallway outside his room for 6 weeks. Those nights were full of worry, silence, and checking all the time. Some reporters twisted the story and said it was the end of his career. She kept those headlines away from him, only let out what doctors said was okay, and kept the inner fight from the outside world. Even though she was tired, she held the line. She mostly dealt with the stress by herself. Then there was the return. In 2011, she wrote his speech for his return. Every word was chosen to calm fans' nerves and let everyone know that André was ready. That night, 15,000 people slept in Maastricht. People in the crowd gave him a long, emotional applause when he walked on stage. It seemed to lift every cloud that had been there for a year. He wasn't the only one who owned that moment. She also owned it because she had led the recovery, shaped the message, and restored the trust that made the return possible. It was hard on them. During that crisis, she was a partner, boss, strategist, and protector all at the same time, and she lost 12 kilograms. But she used that weight of experience to write her next book. Writing honestly about the problems and stress that were going on behind the scenes. Her words showed what it means to be a leader when everything is at stake. Her power didn't go away as the years went by. It just changed form. In 2025, she stopped being in public eye. She gave most of their business to their sons and kept a small artistic voice from their castle home, De Torrentes. That choice was made soon after André almost passed out again in Mexico City in March 2024, when 4 shows had to be cancelled because of serious flu. She set a new limit after the scare. There are no sites higher than 2,000 meters. That rule is now permanent, and it has already kept a few shows from getting too dangerous. Pierre and Mark were in charge of the business empire their parents built by 2025. Pierre bought the old Hotel d'Orléans in July 2025 and made it a sign of their family's growing business. Mark took over planning the show and managing the artists. André was there the whole time and had a small artistic role in every project. Their castle stayed the center of decisions and ideas. Marjorie watched from a safer distance, but she still had a say in what happened when it meant the most. The next thing was André's plan to quit in 2026. Shadows of the Waltz, his autobiography, would reveal 20 professional secrets and the stories behind his big breaks. 100,000 copies would be printed in the first run. In March 2026, the launch would take place at the Friedhof. There were also stories about how Marjorie pushed them to do risky things, like buying the castle that became the center of their kingdom.